Okay, let's run a simulation, a really high-stakes one. We're going to imagine a global energy crisis so big, so severe, that the security of all of North America is on the line. We need to look past the headlines and figure out what would really happen.
So here's the scenario, and it is a big one. What if tomorrow morning you woke up and all oil from the Middle East and from Russia was just gone, vanished from the global market? What happens next?
Now, the conventional wisdom here seems pretty obvious, right? The US is the biggest crude producer in the world. Canada's right up there too. So if there's a massive global shortage, you'd think it would be an absolute windfall for our domestic energy companies. But let's get a handle on the sheer scale of what we're talking about. This isn't a small disruption. We are talking about more than 27 million barrels of oil disappearing from the market every single day. That is a catastrophic, economy-shattering hole in the world's energy supply. Now, to understand what happens next, you have to know that not all oil is the same. U.S. shale oil, it's typically what we call light and sweet. It flows easily and it's simple to refine. Canadian oil sands, though, that's a different beast. It's heavy, it's sour, it's, well, sludgy. This difference is going to be absolutely critical later. But notice the one thing they have in common. They're both expensive to get out of the ground, needing oil prices to stay well above $30 a barrel just to break even. So you add it all up. There's a massive global shortage, prices are about to go through the roof. This has got to be a home run for North American oil producers, doesn't it? They're safe, they're pumping, and the entire world is desperate for what they have. Wrong. And this is the exact point where that conventional wisdom completely and utterly falls apart. The reality of this situation is so much more complicated and honestly way more dangerous for our own oil producers than anyone thinks. You see, the problem is that a crisis this big doesn't just stay in the financial pages. It hits Main Street hard. It becomes a massive domestic political crisis almost overnight. We're talking about the $10 gallon problem. In this scenario, the global price of oil doesn't just climb, it explodes. We'd be looking at prices way, way north of $200 a barrel and staying there. The world economy just can't function at that level. And what does a $200 barrel of oil mean for the average person? It means pain at the pump like we've never seen before. We're talking about gas prices flying past $10 a gallon everywhere, from California to Maine. And for any president, that is a 5-alarm political fire. So how does the White House deal with this kind of political firestorm? Well, there's a powerful and often forgotten tool that the president has. It's a true trump card that completely changes the game. This power actually comes from a deal made way back in 2015. To get oil exports legalized after a decades-long ban, a compromise was struck. And here's the key part. It gave the president the unilateral power to ban all U.S. crude oil exports if they decide the market is causing a political or economic problem. And the best part for them, no Congress needed. And make no mistake, this isn't some long, drawn-out process. When you're facing $10 gas and voter outrage, any president would pull this lever. It can be done. Literally with the stroke of a pen. All those millions of barrels of U.S. crude we export every day, they would drop to zero, overnight. Okay, so the U.S. pulls up the drawbridge and protects its own market from the global chaos. But what about Canada, our biggest energy partner? With U.S. oil out of the global picture, this must be a golden opportunity for them to sell their oil to a desperate world for insane prices, right? Wrong. Again. See, most of Canada's crude has to travel south through the United States to get to refineries and ports. So an American export ban effectively traps all that Canadian oil right here with our own. They're stuck. And this one action, the export ban, it leads to the single most important consequence in this whole briefing. It creates two totally separate energy worlds with two totally different price tags. We call it the Great Energy Bifurcation. The export ban creates this completely wild new reality. North America basically becomes an energy island, super saturated with oil that has nowhere to go. Because of that glut, our domestic price would actually get capped by the cost of production, somewhere around $60 to $70 a barrel. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is in that catastrophic shortage, with prices exploding past $200. We'd have cheap energy while the global economy is on fire. So if the oil producers are forced to sell their crude at a capped, low price, who actually wins in this scenario? Well, it's not the drillers, it's the processors. It's the U.S. refining industry. But even for the refiners, it's not an instant party. They've actually got a pretty big,
pretty expensive short-term problem to solve before they can cash in on what would become a massive long-term windfall. The reason they can eventually win so big lies in a critical loophole. The president's ban is only on raw crude oil. It does not apply to refined products like gasoline, diesel, or jet fuel. And that loophole is the key that unlocks an incredible amount of profit. So let's just walk through what happens to them. First, they have a problem. For years, U.S. refineries have set themselves up to process that heavy, sludgy crude we used to import. Suddenly, they are flooded with all this light, sweet U.S. shale oil. They have no choice but to adapt. That means writing off billions in old equipment and retooling their facilities. It's going to cause 1 to 2 years of stressful, inefficient operations. But the payoff? Oh, the payoff is huge. Once they're retooled, they are buying North American crude at that cheap, capped price of $60 and selling gasoline and diesel to a desperate world market for the equivalent of $200. The profit margins are absolutely astronomical. All right, let's boil this all down. This is your final security briefing. These are the key takeaways you absolutely have to remember when thinking about this. First, in a crisis this big, conventional wisdom will get you into trouble. It's always the second and third order effects that really matter. Second, that presidential export ban authority, it's one of the most powerful and frankly most misunderstood geopolitical tools America has. Third, that tool turns North America into a low-priced energy island, almost completely insulated from what's happening in the rest of the world. And finally, the bottom line, U.S. and Canadian oil producers lose, and they lose badly. But U.S. refiners, after a tough couple of years, become the biggest winners on the entire planet. It all comes back to this one central idea, which is captured perfectly in this quote. It's often the second, third, and even fourth order effects that are the ones that really stick. If you only look at the immediate, obvious outcome in a crisis, you will get the answer wrong every single time. And that leaves us with one final, very important question to think about. In a world of energy chaos, is America's real energy weapon not how much oil we can pump out of the ground, but our absolute power to decide if that oil ever leaves our shores?